Hey friends, my name's Timothy, though some people do call me Tim. Here on my channel, we help people become better dungeon masters because I spend way too much time playing this game. My wife's yelling at me to hold on in the other room because she's stuck with the delay, so she's like, no, the sound's not coming through, but I think we have finally fixed these problems, and things are actually working out, so we can continue on and power through this kind of thing. So hopefully you'll be coming along on the ride for us. Today we are exploring out of that 50-page monster document, the mages section of the playtest material. We are going to start out by finishing up the Fiend Patron Warlock that we were out of time last week, and then from there, according to our poll, we're going to move on to Wizards and their mighty spellbooks before backtracking to the Sorcerer. Because I am a professional dungeon master and I run 7 games a week, I have a game in about an hour and a half, so we only have an hour to do this, so we're going to see how fast we can blitz through this. Welcome aboard. So, checking out the designer notes on the Fiend Patron in order to see what they really changed out of all this. Patron spells replace expended spell lists. So, essentially, they're just adding extra spells to your prepared list instead of giving the possibilities. Kind of like they did to the Sorcerer in the most recent Tasha's introductions. And honestly, that's probably pretty on par, especially for Warlocks. I just think that's a nice touch. That one's not a big deal. Once per long rest, you can cast one of those spells without a spell slot. That, on the other hand, is a little more of a thing, and definitely goes in the face of some of the, commentary that I've seen wandering around out there on the internet regarding how Warlocks are getting gypped out of a lot of spells because, comparing them at 11th level and so on and so forth. If you're adding in, spells at 11th level, you're adding in Burning Hands, Command, Scorching Ray, Suggestion, Fear, and Stinking Cloud on top of their normal spells prepared every day. That's a lot of extra bonus spell slots. That's pretty awesome. Dark One's Blessing is now also triggered by an enemy dropping to 0 hit points within 5 feet of you, which I take to mean that they're trying to make it so that you can get the blessing even if somebody else does the killing, which is always kind of a frustrating point in those drop to 0 mechanics, because you sit there and you go, yay, the guy, I've almost got him down, but I didn't manage to get the killing blow, and so somebody else kills him, and then I don't get my temporary hit points, which I was counting on. That sucks. Dark One's now in luck, used a number of times equal to your spellcasting ability modifier rather than only once per rest. Rewards us for putting in more charisma for that 6th level ability. And, what did it used to be? Rather than once per rest. It used to be once per short rest, I'm pretty sure. So probably you're coming out net positive with that one, and it allows you to back use on that thing instead of just getting a single charge here or there once per rest kind of thing. So there's probably a positive thing in using it that way. It's also fitting to a lot of the other changes that they've made, like the Goliaths and the Eladrin and those kinds of races where they're giving those kinds of abilities on a daily basis now to give people a little more control over how much they use, but a little less short rest dependency and or a little bit less extendable power that could just last forever if they take enough short rests, which depends a lot on your DM and your group, of course. Phoenix Resilience is no longer bypassed by magic or silvered weapons, which monsters almost never possess. Let's see. Phoenix Resilience. Okay. I don't know. You can change it every short rest, and it gives you resistance. I kind of liked the magic or silvered weapons thing, but I can see that, honestly, I see this as going the other direction from what they're talking. They're like, monsters almost never possess this. That's a good thing. We don't really want monsters to be able to punch through the Fiendish Resilience, so them not having it is good. But there's plenty of times that an NPC that came out with a silvered weapon because they were prepared, that would be kind of on par, and it adds a lot of flavor to it. But I can see also reasons why you might not necessarily want to do that one if you were trying to imply that the Fiend Warlock covered both devils and demons, which I don't think is something we're intending to do here. So, yeah, I think that was kind of a waste of time, probably. But we'll see. Oh, hi. We've got a cat trying to join us. Hurl Through Hell can now be used again if you expend a spell slot of at least 4th level and it has a saving throw for the target. Well, that's a sad case on the saving throw just because of how awesome and powerful that ability was, but at the same time, dropping off the adding a saving throw and making it able to be used multiple times probably meets some form of balance, though 4th level spell slots are pretty stinking pricey to a half-caster warlock who is only going to have, at 14th level, he's only got 1 of those suckers and only gets 3 ever. Still not awful to have a saving throw on that, and if nothing else, it keeps it from being quite so like just this is a huge chunk. It's more of a possibility, makes it a less likely thing to get dumped on a legendary monster and more likely to be used on other situations where it's going to be more usable, more suitable perhaps. And likewise, when you have something only once a day, one of the things that I know they mentioned was something they found, and I certainly see it at my table, 1 a day items don't get used nearly as often as items that have some other mechanic for using them again, just because there's that fear of using it at the wrong time. So giving them another chance to use it is a positive benefit. All right, we're going to dive straight on from there. Overall, I think I would say that I like what they did with the Fiend Pact there, and I really like the free spells side of that one, though I would have to actually go back and do the math as to how many spells per day that means the Warlock is getting compared to a full caster. But I suspect it brings them just that teeny bit closer, certainly far above the half-caster status that they originally look like, by giving them that extra spell for each, like an extra slot, 2 slots of every level that they've got access to as they slowly gain those abilities. That's a lot in a running game. Hey, Skippy, thanks. Yes, definitely agree on the lore comment there.
No problem.
Oh, apparently, Skippy, you and Siri sound very similar to each other, and so now I've got electronics going off in the background. Please ignore. All right, Wizards. Wizards are my all-time favorite class. It's what I used to play all the time, and it's what everybody has had their chance at one point or another, but it's where I started my D&D, was nerd with a book. Got to keep it typical, right? True to life. All right, so cantrips 3, prepared spells 4. Prepared spells list is not the same as their spell slots, which was something that was being bandied about originally for others. And it looks like 4 and then 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, just straight 1 up more every level. It's no longer, oh, nope, slows down again later. And it's no longer dependent on like intelligence to control how many prepared spells you get. I wonder what the reasoning was for that. We'll see. All right, design notes from Wizards. Nice of them to give us that. Spellcasting now allows you to use your spellbook as a spellcasting focus. That definitely needed to happen. Wizard Spellbook is a new first level feature which gets all the spellbook rules into one place, okay, and gives you Scribe Spell as a freebie. Academic is the new second level feature. Arcane Recovery, move from first level to second level. Memorize Spell and Modify Spell and Create Spell, which we partially went over in the in last week's live. was our spells, but it looks like we're going to call them features as well, just so that we don't cost people their spellbook slots. Spell Mastery moved from 18th down to 15th. Whoa. Signatures from 20th to 18th. Okay. And Epic Boon, nobody cares about you. All right. Creating a wizard. So far, so same on all that kind of thing. Multi-classing is now more plausible thanks to the changes to the Warlock. I kind of like the fact that the wizard might have somebody to actually play with now. Spellcasting. All right, let's see. Cantrips. 3 of your choice. Whenever you gain a level, you can replace one. When you reach 4th and 10th, you learn another one. Okay, so they no longer are going potentially with the Tasha's approach of letting you change your cantrips on a regular basis. That's kind of a loss to the utility side of things there, though I know, honestly, lots of people did not even use that feature when it was available to them, just because it makes your day so complicated. You're already prepping all of your spells, so having to go back to the entire wizard list of cantrips was a bit much. Spell slots, as normal. Prepared spells. Choose from your spellbook, and the chosen spells must be a level that you have. Increases as you gain wizard level, which we saw. It looks like they're getting gypped, though, still. Whenever that number increases, choose additional spells. All right. If another wizard feature gives spells that you always have prepared, those spells don't count against the number of spells you can prepare with this spellcasting feature. Well, here's hoping that means that they're doing that to your School of Magic spells, which would be long, long overdue. And they're giving you some School of Magic spells. I think that's something they're actually doing, and I certainly hope so. Let's see. Whenever you finish a long rest, you can change them. Prepared ones. And requires time spent studying at least 1 minute per spell level. Okay, pretty similar stuff there. Spellcasting focus. Okay, Wizard Spellbook. This is new. Let's see. Tiny object that weighs 3 pounds and contains 100 pages, each of which can hold a spell. Repository for your arcane findings. Writing in a magic cipher. Sure no one else can read your book without magic. Known spells. It starts with Scribe, Spell, and 6 other first level spells of your choice. On your adventures, you might find other spells that you can add using Scribe Spell, which costs the same in time and money as it used to, so making it a spell is kind of weird, but you have it, I guess, whatever. It seemed like the costs were pretty much the same. Whenever you gain a wizard level after first, you add 2 arcane spells of your choice to the spellbook, okay, without needing to cast the spell. Just from your usual research, same as they've been all the time. So for now, you're looking at a net positive of 1 spell that isn't actually a spell. So same for Wizard Spellbook. Ritual Caster, if it has the ritual tag, you're good. Just has to come in the book. Creating another spellbook. You can create another one by casting Scribe Spell on a blank book. Adds a spell as normal and makes the book your spell book. So, in other words, you can create a second spell book, but every single spell you try to put in it is going to cost you just as much as it cost you to put it into your book in the first place. In fact, more, because you're not getting any freebies. Ouch. Spellbook can look like whatever you want. Cool. Academic. You spend your time as a scholar is equipped you to recall a broad range of lore. Study action, which is now an action. That's interesting. You have advantage on any intelligence check you make as part of it. So you're really good at studying stuff. Makes sense. Arcane recovery doesn't look like it got a change when you finish a short rest. Less than half rounded up, and you can use it once. Okay. Wizard subclass, we're looking forward to getting into that. Feats Memorize Spell is a spell that just lets you swap your spells out, which we looked at last week. It was honestly awesome. I'm kind of a fan of that one. Modify Spell allows you to make wild and crazy changes to your spells, which also was awesome. Create Spell allows you to create spells at heinous cost, and means that you have to be ninth level in order to create new spells, and that they cost tons and tons of gold that you need to have access to, which fits into the lore, fits into the old school of everything fairly well, but is still a kick in the teeth for the poor wizard who is already pinching pennies in order to deal with Scribe spell. So net neutral on that one a little bit. We'll see. Subclass features, spell mastery. So at 15th level, a first and second level spell that are in your spell book that you can cast at their lowest level whenever you have them prepared and costing you nothing. Dropping that to 15th is actually a really big deal because these first and second level spells that were made mastery have been game changers in any character that has reached 18th level as a wizard previously. From Silvery Barbs to Shield to Mirror Image to Misty Step, there's just no end of spells that people want to be able to cast more of but don't want to waste their spell slots on, and now you can have them at will 3 levels sooner when you don't even have 9th level magic yet. That's amazing. That's definitely a net positive for the wizard. Signature spells, let's see, probably similar to what we had before. You always have them prepared, so that means they no longer count against your preparation slots to increase your number of prepared spells a little bit, and you can cast each of them once at 3rd level without expending a spell slot. So a couple of fireballs a day, that's not too bad. We have a comment in the chat there. Wizards are so powerful to me in the current iteration, I don't think the cost for creating spells is really that big of a deal. But that's just me. That is a fair comment, to be honest. Especially given the actual power level of some of the possibilities of Modify Spell. 1,000 gold per level of the spell might not seem like a ton of money. The problem really is just that in modern gaming groups, it's hard to get coin in 5th edition until you reach some of the really high levels. It can be a real challenge for one person to be able to say, this amount of money is mine. And so scribing spells already costs you a fortune in that regard and pretty much leaves you poor throughout your career. But at high levels, it can be even more of a challenge once you start getting into these kinds of options. Now, that said, it's not a deal breaker for me personally. I like the miserly wizard thing. The power hungry, money hungry wizard is a classic that I don't personally have a problem with. But it is adding an additional cost to the wizard that they're going to feel like, because the rules are codified, they're going to feel like they have to do these things, that they are supposed to be doing these things. And having that I should be able to create spells because I'm high enough level to get this ability to create spells, so shouldn't I be creating them, is going to be a pressure that some players feel. So depending upon the aesthetics of play of an individual player, some of them are going to lean into that money hungry and enjoy having to scrimp and scrounge and find ways to get that money and say, hey, I don't want to take a magic item, you just give me all the loot from this dungeon. Some people are going to have a load of fun with that, and other people are going to hate it. So it's kind of going to go one way or the other, I think, and that's the danger spot for it. But it's not a deal breaker for me. D&D official loot logs into this gold scale in a way that works with the wizard from the loot tables. Yeah, I get you, Jacob. So there are some suggested tables out there that give an idea of how much money should flow into a group. If you look in the Dungeon Master's Guide at the tables for individual treasure or horde treasure, it gives you some sort of an idea at different CRs what kind of money you should be having flow into a group. They even have a suggested X many hordes and X many individual treasures by level somewhere. I'm not sure if that's in Xanthar's or in the DMG, I forget. But essentially, you can sort of judge that mark. And one thing that is nice about making Create Spell a 9th level ability is that it's not really until you hit about the 11th level range that those tables start to dump cash in your direction. Prior to 11th level, when you're in the first and second tiers of play, coin is significantly less less easy to come upon in large quantities, in the kinds of thousands that we're talking about, in order for a party of 5 to split 5 or 6 ways and give thousands to that individual wizard player. You're probably looking in the 11th level range before that becomes really feasible and tenable. But there are some official stuff there that we could look at to go deeper into this, but that's outside the scale of this live stream. All right, subclass. Oh, let us please look at a subclass, the Evoker. You focus your study on magic that creates the powerful animals and elemental effects such as bitter cold, searing flame, rolling thunder, crackling lightning, and burning acid. Glorious. All right, they're changing the name to be more evocative, so that we're actually calling them as they are as a class instead of calling them by the school, which is not a real big deal, but I gotta say it probably feels better in ways, because then you can say I'm an evoker in saying I'm a wizard school of evocation, which doesn't have quite the same ring to it. Evocation Savant now adds 2 evocation spells of your choice to your spellbook. Potent Cantrip now also works with cantrip attack rolls, not just saving throws. Choose 2 evocation spells from the arcane spell list, each of which must be no higher than 2nd level. You add these spells to your spellbook without needing to cast the spell. In addition, oh man, they just let me down. That's just a big bummer right there. Well, fine. I mean, 2 spells added to your spellbook because you hit 3rd level is not an awful thing necessarily, but literally it's 2 first or 2nd level spells that they just added, so they might as well have just said, hey, you hit this level as an evoker, here, have 200 gold. Yeah, and that'll never change or help you, so cool, have 200 gold. That's lame. I honestly, what I was really hoping for was that they would lean into the class tables thing that they did for, Druids of the Land, that they have done for now the Warlocks, where the patron gives them a bunch of extra spells and even allows them to cast a few extra per day. That would not have gone astray on the wizard to make them feel like the master of spells if they were locked into specific spells with the evocation or whatever subclass they end up going with, but they got even just 1 extra spell added to their book and an extra casting of the thing that they're a specialist at, which there's precedent for because they did it for an entire edition where your specialization gave you, in fact, 2 editions of Dungeons & Dragons, where if you were a specialist wizard, you got more spells per day than a non-specialist wizard. And then they could put some kind of cool, flavorful penalty on it, like restricting you from your opposed school of wizardry. I mean, it's not like they don't have precedent for that from 2 or 3 editions also. Anyway, just disappointed that they lost that opportunity in this one. That's what I would have liked to have seen is, for instance, the Evoker not being able to memorize conjuration spells, but being able to get 1 extra spell of every level as prepared, and also able to cast that as 1 freebie a day would have been glorious to give the wizard something that made them feel wizardy. I don't know. Anyway, I loved that in the old editions. Disappointed they didn't bring them back. Scope spells. Did they change anything about it? Automatically succeed on their saving throws, and they take no damage if they would normally take half on a successful save. 1 plus the thing there, and it is 1 plus the spell's level, and good. They didn't penalize anybody by making it only certain times a day. So, scope spells still awesome. Potent Cantrip. When you cast a cantrip of a creature and you miss with the attack roll or the target succeeds, the target takes half damage but suffers no additional effect. Cool. So you don't have to pick the saving throw only. You can continue to blast away with Firebolt and be able to do bonus Firebolty damage even when you miss them by scorching nearby. That's cool. Empowered Evocation. Add your intelligence modifier to 1 damage roll of the spell and overchannel first time. 5th level or below that deals damage, you can deal maximum, and then if you keep doing so, you start taking necrotic damage, and necrotic damage increases every time you use it and ignores resistance and immunity. So pretty much the same kind of blasty goodness that we have come to know and love from the Evoker. And that brings us to the end of the Wizard. All right, let's see what time we're at, and we'll give some concluding thoughts. Nice. On the Wizard before we move to the Sorcerer. So, thoughts. Net neutral on the whole spellbook change. I think trying to put it all into one. They tell you we've now made the spellbook much less complicated by putting it all in one place. By the way, we've now turned it into 4 additional class features, and you have to go to the spell section of the player's handbook in order to be able to figure out what your spellbook does. Good job, Wizards. Way to make something less complicated by making it more complicated. That's a little bit silly, but. Outside of just the silliness of that, they didn't change how you memorize spells. They didn't change how you add them to your spellbook. They did change how many spells per day that you get to prepared, and they nerfed the Wizard in the process. Instead of being able to, at first level, do 1+ intelligence modifier, which probably usually equals right out to the same as what you're getting right now with 4. But sometimes would be 3, sometimes in certain games might even be higher. But now it is a hard cap 4, and as you go up, you gain 1 every level until you get to a point where you start gaining even less spells prepared. Your Wizard, the master of being prepared, now has even less options every day as to what spell they're going to choose to cast. That there is a huge net negative in my mind. While I agree that it is like part of the fun of playing a Wizard is actually choosing the spell that is going to mean that you are prepared, there are so many tax spells in the Wizard repertoire that you just kind of feel like you have to prepare in order to be able to function properly. And now those are going to be even more dear than they ever were before. They become an even larger tax on the Wizard's resources than they were before. I love the flavor of the modify spell, and there's going to be all sorts of crazy shenanigans that come from people putting those in there, but the cost of the create spell is going to be fairly prohibitive, and honestly, I'm not convinced that's not how it should be, but I'm not convinced that that is how it should be either. It could go either way for me on create spell. Modify spell's huge. There is the one spell that they introduced that allowed you to swap your spells prepared, and I want to take a moment to go back to that real fast, and let me see if I can find it really quickly, because finding things quickly is not my specialty. Let's see, here we go. Chaos, Bolt, Hex, Create, Memorize. Memorize spell. Memorize spell is a ritual, 1 minute casting time. So, Memorize spell takes a little bit of the bite out of the tax spells, at least in terms of a few of the really long-lasting spells that are kind of attacks in the Wizard. Mage Armor, for instance, you'd be able to memorize in the morning and then swap out 11 minutes into your day, maybe swap it back in 8 hours later in order to be able to do it again. There's nothing really wrong with that as an option. It also means you can take in 11 minutes to swap in your tiny hut and several other spells, and you're going to be able to solve problems with your spell book in a way that is going to feel pretty cool in terms of like Johnny on the spot solving the problem with 11 minutes of work or 1 minute of work. The downside to that is that you're going to be so constrained in your spell memory that you're going to be taking the staples of the class, the staples of what you're needed, and you're going to very rarely have a lot of room, it feels like, to have those spells already prepared. And I'm telling you now, the fun part of being the Wizard is not that you have this spell in your spell book, and if you rest overnight, or in 11 minutes, rest for 11 minutes in order to be able to pull that spell out of your spell book, be prepared for the problem, and fix it. The fun part of playing a Wizard is to say to yourself, what might happen today, and what spells do I have that might overcome the problems that the DM is going to throw against me? And when you come up to that situation and the DM's like, ha ha ha, here is the problem, and you're like, DM, I prepared that spell today. That is a cool feeling where you feel like you have just outsmarted the world and you've done some really cool stuff. Being able to say, hey DM, give me 11 minutes to study my spell book and I'll have that spell that you already knew was on my book, and yeah, I'll have it in a minute. Wait, guys. Not nearly as cool. It's just not as cool. I like the memorize spell. I like the flexibility that it's offering for people, but I don't feel like it gives that feeling of preparation that giving the wizards a decent memory for their spells would give you. I mean, as is, you're adding 2 spells to the spell book for every level. Just adding 1 spell memorized every level is the least we can do for the wizard in order to allow him to have some versatility. And then adding in 1 per level for your specialization, even if you only added to preparation and didn't give them more spell slots a day, it would still allow them, even the evoker would be able to be like, okay, my evocation is covered by my freebies, and I've got the space left to prepare all these utility spells, all these niche spells that I need in order to take care of business. I think a huge opportunity was lost there, and I would say for wizards, I would probably give them maybe a 6 out of 10. 6 out of 10 for wizards. All right, let's take a look at our sorceress friends. All right, that's fighter. We're not doing you, fighter. Sorry. Sorcerer, primary ability, charisma. Design notes. Let's see. Innate sorcery, new first level spelling, giving 2 sorcerer-only spells that represent the roiling magic within. The other new sorcerer features in the playtest emphasize the ability to tap into their innate magic to create extraordinary effects. Okay. Spellcasting gives more spells to the sorcerer over the life of the character, now capping at 22 rather than 15. Okay, hold on a minute. 22 prepared spells for the sorcerer. Nope, that's Warlock. We're going to go down to the next one. 22 prepared spells for the wizard. Is anybody seeing my problem here? Like, hi, I'm a specialist who only has this certain amount of magic that comes through my blood. By the way, I have the same amount as the wizard. Okay. And, by the way, we also have extra spells given to us that are not just about putting spells in and out of our spell book. Oh, and did we mention we have meta magic as well? Wizards. Okay. Font of Magic has a sorcerer level prerequisite for creating each spell slot. Okay, just so you can't multi-class your way to craziness there. Meta Magic has moved from 3rd to 2nd level, and the feature now gives you 3 Meta Magic options instead of 2, and 3 more to 13th, and you can change them after each long rest. Wow! Talk about versatility. Sorcerer's Vitality at 5th level. Okay, Interruption at 7th, Sorcerer Incarnate at 9th. Those are all spells that we're pretending are special features. Sorcerer's Restoration has moved from 20th level to 15th, and it restores some sorcery points when you roll initiative. Well, that one is probably long overdue for the sorcerers on that front. I will give you that one. Arcane Apotheosis, new 18th level feature. Epic Boon, we still don't care about you. Sorry. All right, Constitution Charisma stays the same. Pick your skills. Multi-classing, pretty much the same stuff that we have seen previously. Preparing spells individually. Okay. So, innate sorcery. An event in your past, left this thing in there. You always have the Sorcerous Burst and Chaos Bolt spells prepared. So, that means that you have essentially 5 cantrips. More than the wizard. And you have Sorcerer's Bolt prepared, which gets you 2 prepared spells plus 1 for 3. 1 less than the wizard at 1st level, so at least you start out in the same sort of area and a little behind. Though you do have more cantrips than they do. And no tax cantrip to have an attack roll. Spellcasting. When you reach 4th and 10th, you get another cantrip. Spell slots, same all. Prepared spells of first level plus. You prepare them rather than choosing. You may start with these. Number of spells also improves as you gain levels. Right. Found sorcerer feature is this. Changing. Okay, you can replace one every time you level, so you are stuck with what you have in your memory from day to day at least. So they are maintaining that flavor for the sorcerers. And charisma is your ability casting, and you can use an arcane focus. Font of magic, which honestly they should have probably just mished into meta magic in some respects, but I am glad to see meta magic drop down to second level so that you can do something more than just create an extra spell slot with your sorcery points at second level, which felt a little weird. Does mean at second level you have more spell slots per day than pretty much anybody else, or you can use the cool meta magic options. We'll see what the meta magic options look like in a little bit, but you do gain 3 of them now. You can still only use 1 on a spell when you cast it, and you can replace one of your options every time you finish a long rest, which is wild. Sorcerer subclass we will learn about later. Sorceress Vitality is essentially a third level spell that heals you for not enough. Arcane Eruption is essentially a fireball that does conditions, and if you roll any ones on any of your dice, is the most powerful 4th level spell in the game. Sorcery Incarnate, again, another of those spell ones that we went over last week. And Sorceress Restoration. You gain 4 expended sorcery points whenever you roll initiative or finish a short rest. Okay, so you can duplicate and tap on this one. In fact, whenever you roll initiative, does not mean that you have already had to have 0. So you're going to be able essentially to spend 4 sorcery points every fight for 0 cost. After you, as long as you just keep doing so every time you go into a fight. That is a really, really big deal and a huge boost to the sorcerer from 15th level onwards. That's a big power jump right there. Also, and if you don't happen to manage to get yourself up because you happen to have spent 8 sorcery points in one fight for some reason, then hey, you might as well take a short rest and get those back as well. Woo! That is going to be a huge change to how sorcerers use their points. After 15th level, there's pretty much never going to be a time that it is worth your spell slots to take a spell slot and dump it back in to turning into sorcery points. But there is now going to be a situation where you can freely recharge your spell slots. And all you have to do is be conservative in how you fight, and you can pretty much run spells all day long by creating those spell slots out of your sorcery points. Not having any kind of trigger point in that, except for initiative or short rests, is going to transform the way that sorcerers do sorcery in a big way. That's going to be crazy powerful. I'm not sure exactly whether or not I would say it's overpowered, but it's certainly not underpowered. That's for sure. Arcane Apotheosis. You always have the wish spell prepared. Oh, you have one more spell prepared, and you have no chance of losing the ability to cast the spell. Whoa! In addition, you can cast Wish to replicate a spell of 1st through 8th level without expending a 9th level spell slot. You instead expend a spell slot of the replicated spells level. Okay. All right, let me unpack this here. What I'm reading is that an 18th level sorcerer is better than any wizard ever at being the guy who breaks out the spell that is needed. You can cast Wish with no chance of losing Wish and no chance of even suffering penalties by casting 1st through 8th level spell slots, and you just have every single spell slot of every class in the game on your spell list. Always. Okay. If that stays in, and I don't see a huge uptick in sorcerers and a huge dip in wizards. I don't know what people are thinking. Unless I'm missing something in how that reads, and please, if I am, point it out to me in the chat, guys, because that is insane. I just can't even do words right now as to how insane that one is at 18th level compared to everything else that I've seen. Wow. Okay. Meta magic. Let's dive into that, and we'll come back to final thoughts. All right, we do still have 20 minutes. Man, we are killing it. All right, Careful Spell now prevents an affected creature from taking half damage on a successful save. It essentially is now Sculpt Spell. That's great, and honestly, how a lot of people have played Careful Spell. I know I messed up and played it that way for an entire level 1 through 20 campaign for my granddaughter. Whoops. Before I realized that Sculpt Spell was better than Careful Spell. And we didn't have the heart to change it by that point because we'd fireballed so many poor people. It literally was the one spell that she would cast. If she had an 8th level spell slot, it was Fireball. She was a one-trick pony, and it was glorious. And we had loads of fun. So I wouldn't take that away. Distance Spell increases a range by number of feet based on your sorcerer level rather than doubling the range. Okay. Extended Spell now also makes it easier to maintain concentration on the affected spell. Okay, makes it interesting. Heightened Spell now costs 2 sorcery points rather than 3, and imposes disadvantage on all the target saves rather than only the first save. That's honestly all the target spells instead of only the first one is probably a completely needed change. The 2 versus 3, yeah, that's probably not a bad thing. But honestly, with them having practically unlimited sorcery points at 15th level onwards, a lot of the best save or suck kind of spells are in those upper echelons of play, and Heightened Spell is going to see a lot more play than it ever did before. That's for sure. Quicken Spell now includes a clarification on how it interacts with the game's general rule on casting bonus action spells. Ah, dear. Okay, that's fun. Seeking Spell has been imported. Subtle Spell now also removes the need for material components unless it consumes its material components. Just a needed change so that you didn't have to find an excuse for slipping your hand into your pocket and finding the fluff that you needed, or in most people's cases, utilizing the material staff, wand, orb, whatever it was that you chose to bypass the spell component pouch that is my all-time favorite love. Honestly, it sucks a little bit that sorcerers use regular material components anyway because you're a sorcerer and it's supposed to be coming out of your blood, but I need a bit of bat guano in order to fireball. I don't really buy that one terribly much, but I much prefer for sorcerers at least the arcane focus. You can be like, here it is, like I've got this item that channels my power. That's not so bad. Transmuted Spell dropped over. Twin Spell redesigned. 2014 version was too powerful. Okay, well, I can't argue that it was amazing. And cast the extra spell with a sorcery point discount. That is true. Targeting limitation of Twin Spell failed to contain how overpowered the option was and caused confusion. Okay, keeps the discount with Quicken Spell carrying the extra spell on a turn weight. Okay, I'm going to have to read those, obviously, because I don't understand what they're saying there. All right, Careful Spell. We already talked about 1 sorcery point, charisma modifier, people. Slightly more in some cases, slightly less in others than what the evoker's getting, but it's a suitable sort of thing to use. Distance Spell. They said that they were doing difference based on level. 30 times your sorcery level. Holy cow, at high levels that is a really, really long distance. 450 feet at 15th level for a single sorcery point. Not going to come up tremendously often, but when it does, it's going to be cool for the sorcerer, so I'm down with that. Empowered Spell. When you roll damage, re-roll number of damage dice equal to charisma modifier. Yep, that one's kind of garbage still. Extended. 1 minute or longer, you can spend 1 point to double its duration. Ooh, a maximum. Okay. and requires concentration. You have advantage on any saving throw you make to maintain that concentration. Not certain what the design thought was behind putting that advantage on concentration checks into extended spell. Yeah, I'm not really sure what the design thought was behind that one. I suppose for a couple of sorcerers, it's going to mean that they don't need to take war magic as an option, and that's not necessarily a bad thing to vary things out a little bit. But I don't expect that a ton of people who are taking extend spell are going to see a huge dip in the warcaster situation there, because they're not going to want to always extend everything. We'll see. All right. One target, disadvantage on its saving throws against the spell. Much better worded. Good job there. Quickened. All right. Quickened is one of the ones they did a little thing. You can spend 2 sorcery points to change the casting time to a bonus action for this casting. You can't modify a spell in this way if you've already cast a spell of first level or higher on the current turn, nor can you cast a spell of first level or higher spell on this turn after modifying a spell in this way. I've always hated how they've had to word this bonus action rule. Okay, if you've already cast a spell of first level or higher, you can't use this, and you can't cast a spell of first level or higher after modifying a spell this way. So that's how they're trying to tell you that if you use Quicken Spell, your other spell needs to be a cantrip, basically. Seeking. Same old, subtle. Gets rid of material components. That's cool. Transmuted. Same. Twinned. When you cast a spell of 1st through 5th level that you also cast on your previous turn by expending a spell slot, you can fuel this turn's casting of the spell by spending a number of sorcery points equal to the spell's level rather than expending a spell slot. Oh, interesting. Okay. So essentially what Twin Spell, there used to be a version of this in 3rd edition where if you prepared a spell and you metamagicked it, which was a wizard thing back then as well. Anyway, you cast it off with the metamagic intact, and then a round later it would repeat the spell. And this is basically what this is. Twin Spell is no longer Twin Spell, now it's Repeat Spell. Big hit to what you can, the shenanigans that you can do with the Twin Spell is coming in with this one, because not only can you no longer twin concentration spells in any really viable, likely to be chosen way, because you're going to cast it a second time and you'll have to choose which of the two you're going to have concentration on. In fact, you won't get a choice. The first one will be the one that you fail, and the second one will now be active. But also, it's going to come out over 2 rounds, and it's going to cost you your action both times. That's pretty brutal. It does also mean that while they were saying, hey, Quickened is going to make up for some of this, Quickened will still, on both of those rounds, let me double check the wording in Quickened. Cast a spell first level higher. Yep. So, because of the way that is worded, Quickened means that on both of those rounds, even though you're casting the spell using sorcery points instead of spell slots, you will not be able to cast another leveled spell with Quickened, which means for 2 rounds, your action is spent casting whatever it was that you cast, and at best, you are quickening a cantrip with your secondary options on those 2 rounds. This is a huge hit to Twin Spell. Now, admittedly, you've got sorcery points coming out of your backside, and you can create spell slots all day long now by doing so. And when you are using your spell slots, you can now use your sorcery points at a discount instead of using your sorcery points. That's going to be a ton of single casts. Just keep the party going, sorcerer power. You are literally a font of magic, because you will pretty much never run out. All right, let's take a look at the Draconic Sorcery subclass, an old favorite of mine that always kind of came in a little lackluster. Let's see if they've juiced it up for this next iteration of Dungeons & Dragons. All right, base AC is now Dex plus Charisma rather than 13 plus Dex. That is kind of cool, I gotta say, right there. Your charisma equals your scaliness, and you get to essentially come up with a new way of having the barbarian style, monk style, only this one's Dex Charisma instead of Dex Con or Dex Wiz. That's cool. Dragon Speech now lets you communicate with any creature that has the dragon type. The damage type choice has moved. Interesting. I'm not sure why they didn't want to just give you the draconic language anymore, but I guess they're hoping to vary some of that around, and you get to talk with any kind of dragon, even if you don't speak the same language. No longer charges a sorcery point for the resistance. People have requested more uses for the damage type associated with this feature. The playtest versions of Draconic Exhalation and Dragon Wings both respond to that. Okay, we'll see what that's about. And replace Draconic Presence, a low-rated feature in the subclass, and Sorcery Incarnate is now modified Dragon Wings. Okay. All right, let's see. Oh, and down here a little bit more. Draconic Bloodline has a new naming convention for Sorcerer subclasses, X Sorcery, where X is a word like. Okay, Draconic Aberrant or Clockwork. Okay, they don't want to use the term Bloodline anymore. Probably for reasons of political correctness. Whatever. All right. Draconic Resilience. The magic in your body, physical traits, still get the hit point increase. 3 at 3rd level and 1 more for every level after that. So plus 1 hit point per level. And then you get the cool new armor class thing that I do think is a good move. You can speak to and you can understand and be understood by anybody with the dragon type. That's awesome. Though it does run into some fun situations where you try to talk to the Dracolich, and suddenly the fact that you didn't take Draconic as one of your languages makes you look like a bit of a rube in the room, because he's still talking Draconic, but now he's an undead, not a dragon type. Unless, of course, they're planning on changing undead to be a subtype. But I wouldn't count on it. Elemental Affinity. And Draconic Magic has an affinity with one type, blah, blah, blah. You have resistance to that damage type, which you darn well should. And when you cast a spell that deals type, you can add your Charisma modifier to 1 damage roll of that spell. Okay, so the Evoker ability only based on a class type. I like that. That's good. Draconic Exhalation. Once per turn, when you cast Sorcerer's Burst, you can exhale it in a 15-foot cone rather than selecting a target within range. To cast the spell in this way, you must choose the damage type associated with your Elemental Affinity feature. When you do so, you make separate attack and damage rolls against each creature in the spell's cone. Oh, because it's normally a target spell, this is more like a poof, poof, poof of magic. Still doesn't really hit the cone theme very well for a sorcerer, and 15 foot is dangerously close, but with a new and improved armor class and that slight boost to the hit points that the Draconic Sorcerer has always gotten, I don't hate that. A 15-foot cone rather than a single guy. Sorcerer's Burst, if you remember, is the new cantrip that has an exploding damage dice involved in its casting. So by covering a 15-foot cube and on average getting 2 opponents in that, but potentially getting an easy 3 if you're right in the thick of things, you could increase your odds, particularly at higher levels, of getting a nice solid burst of additional damage that could actually look like a pretty impressive breath weapon. I can see probably why they restricted it to 15 feet, because they were using attack rolls instead of making it a saving throw option. If I'm remembering Sorcerer's Burst correctly, yeah, they said attack rolls. If it was a saving throw option, then I would say a bigger cone would be way cooler for the dragon sorcerer to be able to fling out there. Your innate magic can now manifest as spectral draconic wings. Way! While your sorcery incarnate spell is active, you sprout the wings, gain a fly speed equal to your speed, and can hover. In addition, at the end of each of your turns, you can flap the wings to unleash magical energy, dealing damage to each creature of your choice within 15 feet of yourself. The damage equals your charisma modifier, and it is the damage type of your elemental affinity feature. All right, so within 15 feet of yourself, in a lot of practicality, means like a 17-foot it's almost a fireball, not quite, worth of area, and it's friendly, so you get to choose who suffers and who doesn't. It does only do 5 points of damage at top level if you've maxed out your charisma, which is not tremendously impressive, but not nothing either. Tying it to Sorcery Incarnate means tying it to people's spell slots, but again, the Sorcerer is not hurting for spell slots since the change to their sorcery points. So if everything stays the same as it is there, then why not? You might as well tie everything to the spell slots because we've pretty much got unlimited of them anyway, so whatever. And you're going to get other benefits from the Sorcery Incarnate along the way. Let's take a look again at Sorcery Incarnate because my memory is not sufficient for the task here. Sorcery Incarnate. Bonus action. So bonus action gets you the wings, and you regain sorcery points. Oh, as if we needed that. You can use up to 2 of your metamagic options, so at least you're going to burn through some of those sorcery points, and you have advantage on the attack rolls of every spell you cast. I don't know about you. I'm seeing in my future Elven Draconic Sorcery Sorcerers that are banking hard on Sorcery Incarnate and then blowing their breath weapons of Sorcerer's Burst to get attempted crits. I don't know. Maybe they're not allowing spells to crit still. I can never keep track of that. If spells aren't critting, then it's not so bad. But advantage on everything, lots of hits for those to give lots of chances for those dice to burst. I don't hate it. All right, let's take a look here. So returning back to our sorcery, we are at the end of the Sorcerer, and we still have 5 whole minutes to break this down. So I would say that the Sorcerer came out way the heck ahead compared to the Wizard, and even probably compared to the Warlock in this particular playtest set of material. The some of those changes are just insane to me. Giving the 15th level Sorcerer's Restoration ability is wildly powerful, and admittedly, they're going to have more opportunities to burn those Sorcerer's points than ever before. The nerf to Twin Spell is going to hit some people's plots and plans really, really hard. Depending on what they do with things like the Split Enchantment ability from an Enchanter Wizard, that might just boost in how many enchanters you see out in the world versus sorcerers with suggestion. But it is hard to say exactly an overall design on this. Capping at 22 prepared spells rather than 15 after you're also giving away a handful of free spells in order to give all sorts of options and abilities, to me is just a little asinine. I feel like the Wizard really is the class that got crapped on the most in this playtest. I would probably put my ranking of the Sorcerer, if we're ranking it in terms of good for the game and or good choices, I still wouldn't give them a terribly high rating, probably a 6 or 7. If I'm ranking them in terms of like cool power and great options and flavor and all that sort of things, then my estimation does increase. I do feel like Sorcerers got a load of extra stuff to make them feel more sorcerous, and to play around with loads of options. They're going to be able to bend the laws of magic on a regular basis and not feel so capped in the highest tiers. And at the lowest tiers, though, they're still going to be stuck with the lower number of sorcery points that they've always dealt with in the past. They're going to have great versatility and flexibility and a lot of really cool options available to them. I would say that the changes to the Draconic bloodline were probably my favorite part of the Sorcerer redo, and I would give that a good 8 on my personal scale in terms of like ways to adjust it and make it feel a little bit better without going overboard and doing crazy changes. I think that was a solid redo. Looking at all three classes to try and compare them one to another and decide whether or not we've hit the mark with this edition, I think there's still work to be done. I like a lot of the intent that they're showing in terms of trying to lean more into the Sorcerers' meta magic, trying to lean more into the Wizard's ability to modify and change spells and create spells permanently, and leaning into the Warlock being more than just a dip class and giving it the ability to have enough spells to compete with other classes while still making them feel different and distinct. I really love standouts in the entire Mages section, I would say, for me, in terms of being good. The biggest standout for me is Warlocks being Intelligence, Wisdom, or Charisma, and your pact choice niching that down. I think that was a really cool, flavorful design choice that seems suitable in a lot of ways, though I do worry about how that's going to work out in the multi-classing side of things, just because of how much they packed into those free cantrips. In terms of things I think are kind of one of the silliest, I think the new insistence on saying this is a class feature that gives you a spell, and because it's a class feature that gives you a spell, it's somehow less complicated. Wizards, you still have to look in two places. That makes no sense, Wizards of the Coast. Just put it all in one spot and give us the rules in that one spot. You don't have to make scribing spell and a spell. You don't have to make. You don't even have to make the memorize spell a spell. It would be fine as a 10-minute activity that is a class feature. If you're going to give it out in a class feature, just make it a class feature. Stop giving extra spells in that regard. I can see why they did it in some cases for the Warlock. For the Sorcerer, because they were giving extra spells. But at the same time, you could probably just trust people to pick the cantrip that they were interested in and not have to force it down their throats that way and give the other things as a class feature that did something. I don't know. I just think that was a little bit maybe unnecessary. Well, that brings us to the end of this check through of the Mages. We are going to come back again with another live stream in order to look through the Warriors in more detail and maybe touch back in on the weapons that we went over last week. But for now, I hope you've managed to make your way through this without falling asleep, and that you have a wonderful evening ahead of you, and I'll look forward to seeing you all at another time in another place. But for now, please do remember that there is always another opinion. Have a great night.